Okay, let's talk about absolute value equations. And to do this, the first question we need to ask ourselves is, what is absolute value? So absolute value are lines that look like this. Those vertical lines are absolute value lines. The question that we are asking in this problem is, what number, when I take the absolute value of it, would give me 2? And in order to answer that question, we have to know what absolute value means. Absolute value means distance from 0. So, if I gave you the number 7, how far away on a number line is 7 from 0? 7. Yeah, you count up 7 from 0. There you are. What then would you say is the absolute value of negative 7? Not negative 7, also 7. How far away from 0 is the number negative 7? It's 7 places away. So absolute value always gives you a positive number. Always gives you a positive number. Here's the thing. There are 2 answers to this absolute value equation. What are they? What are the 2 numbers that I could replace with p that would give me 2? 2 and negative 2 are the answers, because the absolute value of 2 is 2, and the absolute value of negative 2 is also 2. So this problem has 2 answers, 2 and negative 2, and we write them in set notation, 2, negative 2. Those are my 2 solutions, 2 and negative 2. So you need to understand that when you do an absolute value equation, pretty much every time, there's one major exception we'll talk about in a little bit, but pretty much every time you've got 2 answers to this problem. Because if you put a negative number in, you get that answer, and if you put a positive number in, you get that answer. Okay? So these can get really complicated. Por ejemplo, now on the last one, the thing that was inside the absolute value could have been positive 2 or negative 2, and we would have got this answer here. In this problem, forget about what I wrote in the absolute value. Whatever's in that absolute value equals 5, which means whatever my finger is covering has to be either negative 5 or positive 5. If negative 5 is here, the absolute value is 5, and if positive 5 is here, the absolute value is 5, which means this equation here, or this expression, 2x minus 3, could equal positive 5, or it could equal negative 5. And now I'm going to solve these 2. So we'll do plus 3 plus 3. That gives me 2x equals 8. And then we'll divide. One of my answers is x equals 4. Now let's go solve the other one. I'll add 3 and add 3. That gives me 2x equals negative 2. And then divide both sides by 2. X equals negative 1. So my 2 possible answers to this problem are 4 and negative 1.
An absolute has to be there. It's either it's a negative and a positive, the same number. That's why the The problem over there is has to be a negative or a positive, so he wrote out the two possibilities that it could be.
And we can check it by taking our answers and plugging them back in. Let's try 4. 2 times 4 is?
8.
Minus 3 is?
5.
And the absolute value of 5 is? 5. Let's try negative 1. 2 times negative 1 is? Negative 2. Negative 2 minus 3 is?
Negative 5.
And the absolute value of negative 5 is? 5.
I don't believe I got that.
So there's a little bit of extra work to be done when you don't have the absolute value by itself. So if I cover this up, what has to be in the spot where I'm covering it up? I covered up the 3x inside the absolute value. What does that have to be?
Negative 14 or positive 14?
Well, no, because whatever it is, I'm going to add 8 to it.
Oh, 6.
Yeah, negative 6 or positive 6. That's a little difficult to see just by looking at it. So one of the strategies we're going to use is when you get something like this, we're going to get the absolute value by itself first. So subtract 8 on both sides. So we get absolute value of 3x equals 6. And now it's pretty obvious. The thing that's inside has to be either positive 6 or negative 6, right? The absolute value of positive 6 is 6, and the absolute value of negative 6 is 6. So I'm going to set up my two equations. 3x equals 6, and the other one will be 3x equals negative 6. Both of those are one-step equations. Both of them you divide by 3. So we get x equals 2, that's one possibility. And same thing over here. And we get x equals negative 2. So what's my answer?
Negative 2 and 2.
Negative 2 and 2. Order does not matter. What?
Dating game, we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Oh, the late dating game. Was that Chuck Woolery?
Yes. Yes, he does. Off Horseshoe Drive. Horseshoe, off of, oh gosh. It's the Waterlands.
Oh,
It's the Waterlands.
So I told you there is one special case that doesn't have two answers. I want to show that one to you right now. That's the special case that doesn't have two answers. Why not?
because it's 0.
Why?
Why is it 0?
Why is it 0?
Because you wrote down 0.
No, like why is the answer 0?
Oh, because there's no negative 0.
Yeah, because 0 is not positive or negative. You can't do like, well, we've got two equations, either z equals positive 0 or z equals negative 0, because there's no such thing as positive and negative 0. So this is the special case where there's only one answer. And that kind of looks like somebody who lost 6 fingers in an accident trying to grab a donut. Right? I think that's what we all saw, right? A bad carpenter eating a donut. All right.
How do you get that? What? I'm lost.
Well, like his dad was a carpenter, so he went into the family business even though he wasn't very coordinated.
You're just trying to shop
So, but
that's
you know what?
21, or is that an absolute X?
Yeah, good question. 2 times the absolute value of x. He was yeah, he was going to go into the family business. You know what the problem was is that he was morbidly obese, but after he lost some of his fingers, he can't pick up donuts anymore, and so he's lost a lot of weight. So really, it was a blessing in disguise. Just like on the problem before last, we're not going to try to do this until the absolute value is by itself. So we're going to do a little bit of algebra to get the absolute value by itself. The first thing we're going to do is subtract 25 from both sides. And then divided by 2. Yep, not a problem. So over here we get absolute value of x equals, and then negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Okay. So the question I'm asking myself is, what would x have to be so that the absolute value is negative 1?
1,
The absolute value of 1 is 1.
-1.
The absolute value of negative 1 is 1.
Oh, so it can't be.
2.
Yeah, there's no answers because absolute value is always positive. So when you see absolute value is negative, there aren't any answers for that. It's impossible to take the absolute value of a number and get a negative. So the solution here is
Always a positive number.
either you could do like the empty set like that, or just say no to donuts. Either one of those is good.
No donuts.
No donuts.
I'm making you shit.
Did you
I was
just do
totally
the circle
with
with the line? Or did you
Either one of these is okay. Either a set that has nothing in it, or this symbol means a set that has nothing in it. Empty set is what that means. They mean the same thing. So this isn't or. Okay, so you can save yourself a lot of pain and heartbreak if you pay attention while you're doing these. Pay attention meaning to the idea that an absolute value cannot be negative. So if you got something like this, the answer is
0.
yeah, not well.
None.
Why do you hurt me?
I know, not 0.
The answer is just say no to donuts.
Just say no to donuts.
Empty set. Because I don't even have to do any math here. It can't equal a negative. Absolute value can't equal a negative. So if on one side you have nothing but absolute value, and on the other side you got a negative, you are done. There's no number you could take the absolute value of that would give you a negative. Yes?
And however, if you have a positive, but whenever you're doing this, the problem, and you end up with a negative on the right side, then it ends up with no donuts either, right? Say negative to donuts. What we just did before. In other words, it was a positive 23, but we took away 25
Yes.
from each side. We made it a negative.
Exactly. If at any point in the problem you have absolute value equals negative, you're finished.
So there's no way you can change that into a positive.
Nope. Because if you multiplied it by a negative 1 to make it positive, this side would also have a negative 1, and then the absolute value is not by itself anymore. So you have to divide by negative 1 to get the absolute value by itself.
Never ending.
All right, one more of these I want to show you that's a little goofy, and then we'll move away from absolute value equations and into absolute value inequalities. And that is what to do if you have an absolute value on both sides. This one looks like it's going to be tricky, and in fact the algebra here is pretty tricky, but the idea is the same. Every problem that we've done so far has been this thing, 3x plus 2 in this case, has to equal two different things. What are the two different things we set it up to equal? You go back to something like this, we did absolute value equals positive, and we did absolute value equals negative, right? Every time. Over here, we did the thing inside the absolute value equals positive, and the thing inside absolute value equals negative. Even though there are two absolute values on both sides, it's exactly the same. Absolute value equals positive this, so positive 5x minus 8. Or absolute value equals negative this, negative 5x minus 8. The parentheses in this case are absolutely required so that you know both the 5x and the minus 8 are negative. Required. And now we just solve these. What could be easier? What do we do?
Minus the 5x.
Okay. And let's be math experts and go ahead and subtract the 2 while we're at it. Let's get it done in one step. So negative 2x equals negative 10. And then, good. You guys are so good at algebra. Your teacher last year must have been really good. You should buy him a nice present. Say thank you for making a difference in my life. The one on the right's a little trickier because of the negative outside the parentheses. We got to make sure the negative goes to the 5x and to the minus 8. So I'm going to leave the left side alone for now, 3x plus 2. And the right side is going to be minus 5x minus negative 8, which is really plus 8, right? And then
Plus 5x.
that's plus 5x this time. It's already different.
Minus 2.
And minus 2. So over here on the left we have 8x, and on the right we have 6. Divide by 8. X equals, and let's go ahead and reduce this. 6/8 reduces to 3/4. So, what's our answer?
3/4 is 5.
3/4 and 5. It does not matter which order it goes in.